video I thought I'd share with you how to do a covered button. I'm going to have to zoom out a little bit. Now these buttons have got the shank to sew on the back. Now you'll often see them in the stores like that. You can buy them in big bags from China or on eBay, but what's handy about these particular ones that are on a packaging is the fact that on the back tells you exactly the size of the piece of fabric you need to cut to fit them. So for this one, if I just read the label here for you, size 3, and it says 22mm. So you'd cut your piece of fabric 22mm. And you can actually cut that out as a template and use it as a pattern piece and draw around it. And because it's made of card, you can reuse it quite a few times. Now the thing is, when you come to use this, is when you do take them off the card, don't be tempted to put them back on until you've finished your sewing, because once they're on, let me just show you. Hang on. Once they're on, if that will come back into focus for me, they're very difficult to get back off because they're actually held in place quite firmly by the plastic shank. Okay, so let me explain. So once you've got them off the card, you've got these two pieces. Okay, you're going to cut your piece of fabric the size you need it to be. So you can see I've already cut this one. I've actually already started as well. So this is a piece I've already started. And what I've done in this particular case, I've just used a plain calico because I want the butterfly to show in this instance. So I've cut out a piece of blue fabric in a butterfly shape using a tiny piece of scrap materials. This project's brilliant for scrap materials, and this particular fabric was already ironed onto some bonda web. What you can do is also use up your scraps of bonda web. There's always scraps. You can trace off your design on here. Just get yourself a pen or a pencil, find a drawing illustration that you need to trace off, or you can do it freehand, which is what I tend to do, and just draw your design. So it might be a flower. The thing I will say to you is make sure you're actually drawing on the paper side and not the rough side where the glue is. If you're not happy with the illustration, I wouldn't be happy with that. I'd have to redraw it. But as I say, you can actually put a design underneath to help you draw it. And then I've got a little design I can then check will fit my area. Am I happy with that? Oh yeah, that would fit okay. And then I could iron that using this, let's say, bonda side down. You need to make sure it is the bonda side down. You can feel it is rougher. That's where the, if you like, it's like a plastic is. It's a fusible web, and you put that fusible web on the back of the material. So if I show you here, this is the front of the material. This has already got bonda web ironed on. You can see the papers there. This is stuff I'd already got scraps of, and so I actually haven't drawn onto that, but I can cut my design out and then this stuff will just peel off. If you're struggling to peel it off, don't peel it from the edges because it will fray. What I tend to do is I just get a sharp pin or a needle, scrape through the middle of it and tear it from the middle, and then it will just peel off. And once it's peeled off, what you'll end up with, I have a whole packet here. Let me just, I'm going to zoom out a little bit just to show you. Hang on, that's zooming in, let's zoom out. Let me just show you. I actually have a folder full of my bonda web scraps. So you can see here, for instance, it's quite clear on this, on the red particularly. You can see the side that's got the bonda web on, it's quite dull. That's where the glue is, if you like, the web. And that's the side that's the right side. So what I would do, if I was going to cut that out, I'd cut that out. I'll grab my scissors, cut out my design. So in this, oh, I might even cut myself out a little heart. Not a brilliant heart, but hang on, let's go back in. It's only scraps, so it doesn't matter if I've got some wastage. You'll see I've got myself a little heart there now, or it could form one of the little tiny petals. It depends on how big your button is that you've chosen to do. And then what I would do, as I say, I can definitely see where the glue is. Just to show you, this is quite a good way of storing your scraps in a plastic folder, especially if it's got bonda web on it, because you want to keep it smooth. You don't want to be ironing it. So anyway, that's a little handy tip there. Once you've got your little pieces, you can iron these on where you want to iron them in your design. You know, I don't want it on this one, but you can see I would do it bonda side down, and I would glue that on by ironing it. What I've done is I've put that there, and that's not a good place to put anything, so make sure you centralise your design. And the reason for that is if you don't, you'll end up with it on the edge, and you don't want it underneath this plastic bit. So everything you do, you need to make sure it is actually going to fit in the middle of the actual button. So let me grab a button. So let's pop that on there. Will that fit? Well, actually, it's quite cute. That would fit, but I would have to make sure it is in the centre of the design, centre of this material. Okay, so that's one thing to make sure of. So this butterfly is already ironed using bonda web in the centre there. And then what I've started to do is I've started to then stitch. So I've done a little running stitch. So let me just get my thread. Let me just grab. Okay, right, I'm back, and I've got a much better sized needle. I'm going to zoom in a little bit for you so you can see more what I'm doing. Let me just turn that over. And all I'm going to do, I'm going to copy the design because it's a butterfly, so that's nice. I can just hand sew my design on. Now I'm choosing to hand sew this. There's nothing stopping you doing this free motion on a sewing machine, but you have to remember it is tiny. And if you are going to free motion this on a sewing machine, I would recommend that you do several at the same time. Draw the circles on a bigger piece of material, put it in a embroidery frame and free motion it that way. Okay, I mean, you can see I've got some long stitches going on, I've got some French knots on this one going on, I've got some cross stitches going on, so you can embroider whatever design you like on that one. On this one I just did lazy daisies to form a flower in a variegated fabric, and this time I've used a coloured fabric background and then just added a bead detail in the centre. This one, as I say, tiny little pieces. I mean, if you're finding it fiddly gluing these down with your bonda web, you can always use a pair of tweezers just to hold it so you don't burn yourself when you're ironing. And then this has been outlined with hand stitching. But again, you can machine embroider that if you so desire, but it is, as I say, you need to make sure there's several of them and you did them on it at the same time. Once you've got that far and you've finished your design, so here's one I've finished, what you're then going to do is you're then going to do a running stitch all the way around. And here's what I've started it so far. This was that huge needle I had earlier. Just rethread it. Okay, and all it is, it's just a very simple running stitch all the way around. Try and keep it even because you get a smoother finish. Okay, a little bit fiddly. You want it fairly close to the edge, but not so close to the edge that the fabric starts to fray. If your fabric does fray, there is a product out there, I don't use it, but there is a product called Fray Stop. But as I say, if you use a close weave fabric, it's easier, which is why in this case I am using a calico. Batiks were lovely for this. So I'd recommend that. And so once you've got it all gathered up, or you've got your running stitch done all the way around, I should say, you pop your button. If you look at it, you've got the one with the shank on it, the actual button itself. Pop the button in, And I tend to pull the knot that I started with and the thread at the same time, and so that gives me a nice pull. And then what I can do, I lay it on the table. You can then tie those two ends, the knotted end, the beginning end, and your end end where your needle is. You can actually knot it. That's what I tend to do myself. Knot it nice and tight. So that's now knotted. And then to finish it off, you cut the threads. Or what I tend to do, I don't tend to double check it fits okay, and I tend to smooth out any like gathers on the edge. So I like to smooth it out, make sure I'm happy with it. I think I am. Cut that thread off. Make sure that is nice and tight. I tend to leave these ends for a little bit, and then I cut them off closer to the plastic later. And then what you want to do is make sure it hurts. You go, ow, that's quite sharp there. So you think, oh, if that hurts, and you know that's the side down, because it's those little hooks that then grip that fabric in. And then all you do is you just push, and you can hear the click. And as soon as you hear the click, and you can get the needle through there to sew it onto a garment, and you know you've got it on. You can still at this point, if you're lucky, if you've got creases you don't like, you can still smooth them out a little bit. And then you can see that thread here, I can then trim that nice and close. Sometimes people don't like to do that, they like to conceal it underneath the cover, but I like to have that extra security knowing it's in the edge. And that's the button finished. So, as I say, this one's already just been gathered. That's just waiting for its background to be popped on. I hope that's helped you and given you some ideas. As I say, you don't even have to bonda web any fabric bits on. You could just do some most amazing, beautiful embroidery, just hand stitch or slow stitch your design on, and have some beautiful buttons. Enjoy!